You're listening to Planet Zero, an original science fiction story by Brian Donahue, read by the author. Chapter 3, The Planet. The planet hung in space, its outer atmosphere swirled with a kaleidoscope of blues and pinks, mixing, separating, and dancing around the globe slowly, almost hypnotically. The blackness of space only made the planet seem all the more brightly exuberant with color. Beneath the swirling atmosphere was a beautifully rugged and exotic terrain. The surface was a strange but alluring mix of desert-like rocks and land, with patches of almost tropical-looking grass and trees. Scattered throughout the grass was a solitary flowering plant that shot up above the grass like skyscrapers in a city skyline. They were a deep purple color and peppered the ground, but only in the grassy areas. Its lakes and oceans, even its rivers, were a type of crystalline bluish green. They were clear and mesmerizingly gorgeous, like a painting so intricately detailed and lifelike that you question whether you're looking at a painting or a photograph. The mountains sprung up from the valleys and had a blue dusting on their peaks. They were all exactly the same height. No mountain rose higher than its neighbor or any other mountain. The uniformity on this planet was something to behold. Everything looked as if it had been placed in perfect order, almost as if a creator had designed it for such uniformity. It was the only planet in its solar system besides its 3 moons. Although human eyes had never seen this planet before, there was new life about to be reborn from out of its deepest ocean. This new life would give words to the longing and desires it had felt for millennia. It hoped it had chosen wisely the life it picked to be its voice. If this great experiment failed, it might be another millennia before a second opportunity to be heard might present itself. This was its first and greatest chance. It needed interaction if its knowledge was to evolve and journey beyond the confines of this solar system. It wanted to move and to grow and to live, but it needed a proxy. The vessel in its orbit was writhing from the pulses it was sending towards it. Wave after wave would be sent up and then back down until contact was made and utterance was given to its motives. Hopefully, the vessel was carrying intelligent beings who could discover, learn, and adapt. Wherever they came from and whatever they looked like, the planet dreamed of them and hoped. Chapter 4, Taken. The Redemption vibrated from the supersonic waves coming up from the planet. Commander Gates thought it felt like a massage chair on steroids. It didn't hurt, but it was uncomfortable. From his experience, being uncomfortable could quickly become dangerous and even deadly in outer space. He held on to the sides of his chair with both hands, swiveled his chair towards his science officer, and spoke as calmly as he could. "Mr. Brooks, what's that rattle I feel?" Brooks' hands were moving frantically across the workstation, trying to discover facts as quickly as possible. He answered, "It's definitely coming from the planet. As of right now, the waves are doing nothing more than shaking us up a bit." Gates pondered that and asked, "Could this be a natural phenomenon of some sort, and we just happen to be in the way?" Sensor Officer Danielle Johnson pushed her voice through the chatter of all that was going on and answered, "Sir, I believe the waves are emanating from almost the exact center of the ocean in alignment with our current orbit. Sensors aren't picking up any energy readings or power signals, but the waves do seem to be coming from the largest ocean on the planet." Brooks added, "Commander, that would suggest that we are indeed being targeted." "Remarkable," said Gates. "Can we fly out of it?" Ensign Wright piped up from the pilot station. "I would love to, Commander, but the readouts on my screen are jumping all over the place. I can't be sure which way I would even be pointing us except by looking out the window." Engineer Fox added, "I wouldn't recommend any attempt to move the ship anyways. Right now we are stable. If we try to move, it could cause stress on our hull. I'd rather ride this out until we have no other choice, Commander." Gates nodded his head in agreement and turned towards the sensor stations. He spoke as calmly and clearly as he possibly could. "Sensor 1 and 2, make sure to collect all the data you can. This is first-time stuff here, and we need all the information we can gather." He punched a button on his station that enabled him to address the entire ship, and then spoke in the most assured tone he could muster. "Attention, Redemption crew. You may have noticed the bizarre shaking we're experiencing. It's coming from the planet and appears to be intentional. As of right now, there is no immediate danger to the ship, as only our pilot controls are being affected. It looks like we have no other choice but to ride this out. Stay calm and stay at your duty stations. Focus on collecting all the data you can, not just on the planet, but on the ship as well. This is all useful information for us as we journey forward and for the experts back home when we return." Gates paused and then added, "We'll get through this, just like we always do." He punched the button again, took a deep breath, and then returned his attention back to the command center crew. They were buzzing with activity, but none more so than Chief Science Officer Brooks and Sensor Officers Johnson and Miller. The most relaxed of all the command crew was Weapons Officer Moore, who was almost lounging in his chair. Commander Gates clicked a button on his console to put himself and Moore on a private channel in their headsets. Whenever a private channel was selected, both participants could hear a distinctive chirp in their right ear. Moore turned his head towards Gates in recognition and asked, "How can I help you, Commander?" Gates smiled as he found Moore's calm demeanor to be reassuring and helpful to his own peace of mind. Moore was a veteran spaceman and had spent many a night with Gates in his quarters telling stories, some true and some not so much. They shared a love of bourbon and tall tales of outer space. Gates found in Moore a kindred soul, whose love for exploration and adventure was as passionate as his own. The commander spoke in a low tone. "I was wondering if the weapons seemed to be functioning normally. Are they affected by these waves?" Moore examined his console readouts once more and shook his head. "They don't appear to be, Commander. My readouts all look normal. Nothing seems locked up or scrambled as far as I can tell. Is there something specifically you wanted to know?" Gates responded, "Actually, I was wondering if you think a warning shot would be possible if this rattling increases in intensity. I'm a patient man, but at some point we may need to shoot our way out of this, if flying out of it isn't an option." Moore understood the importance of what his commander was asking. He examined the information on his workstation again before answering. He knew Gates appreciated thoroughness and would wait an extra second or two when a crew member gave him that. He finally responded, "I believe that the weapons will fire, Commander. However, I've never shot anything into a wave like this before. There's no telling what will happen when our lasers or torpedoes fire into it. The laser could just refract away and our own torpedoes might come back at us." Gates rolled his eyes and said, "That would be awkward, wouldn't it? And dangerous," added Moore. Just then, the ship started to slowly turn. Gates noticed it immediately and didn't wait for his pilot to say something. He spoke right into the moment. "Are we being turned by the wave?" Wright shouted, "It's not me, Commander." Science Officer Brooks interjected, "Commander, the waves have changed, not in terms of intensity, but in frequency. The wave appears to be spinning us slowly. I can't explain it as we've never experienced this type of manipulation in space before. Has our danger status changed as a result?" "Negative, Commander. However, I would suggest that we be prepared for that to shift at any moment." Gates felt the adrenaline running through him at lightning speed. This was a day of firsts for him and his crew. They had experienced space anomalies, asteroids, and various space storms, but nothing like this. This appeared to be an artificially made wave of some kind, and he wanted desperately to learn more. However, the situation was intensifying, and he wondered if they would have to fight their way out of this situation for the sake of self-preservation. One of the hopes of this mission was for Redemption to make first contact and to initiate a friendly alliance with whomever sent the transmissions for the sake of building friendship and cooperation. It was hoped that the senders were peaceful beings who reached out to Earth with peaceful intentions for connection. Earth scientists and astronomers had long believed that there must be life on other planets. Throughout Earth's history, the eyes and cameras and telescopes and satellites have looked ever upward and outward with great fascination. The human desire for connection and for exploration seemed to be embodied in the space race of the late 20th century. It was intensified once again with the private sector pushing the technological advancements in cooperation with NASA. Then the Artemis program ignited the flame again as many nations became engrossed in a cooperative effort to reach Mars. After that, the entire world united for the Redemption program. Gates pondered the situation as clear-headedly as he could. He really wished that the shields used in such classic science fiction television shows like Star Trek were a real thing. He'd love nothing more than to shout, "Shields up, Mr. Brooks!" Nevertheless, he remained focused on what he had: one fantastic ship and an amazing and capable command crew. The ship continued to spin. Then the shaking stopped, and the ship became motionless. A sigh of relief went out over the command center. Gates remained poised and ready for something else to happen. He gazed intently out the window of the command center. He moved to the edge of his seat, placed his feet firmly on the ground, and said, "Stay alert. This might not be over. Science and sensor stations, keep especially alert. I want to know the second something changes." Brooks spoke up first. "Commander, the waves have ceased up here for us, but I'm reading something from the ocean." Miller from Sensor Station 2 added, "Confirmed. The ocean that just sent those waves our way now seems to be rippling itself. The waves in the water are growing larger by the second." Johnson responded with her thick Australian accent, "Oh my God, the waves are emanating from the center of the ocean and rippling outward almost in a perfect circle. I've never seen anything like this." Gates pointed towards the communications officer, Cheryl Atkinson, and asked, "Are you receiving any transmission or signals from the planet?" She shook her head emphatically. "No, sir, I'm getting nothing at all." Ensign Wright, who had one of the best views out the window, shouted, "Look at that!" They could now see the waves from the massive ocean from outer space. It was impressive and terrifying all at once. It was as if an incredible hole was opening up in the middle of the ocean, and all they could see was darkness at its core. Gates barked at Brooks. "How can such a body of water ripple outward like that? We must be witnessing an artificially created event." Brooks didn't hesitate and said, "That would seem to be the case, Commander. However, we know nothing about this planet and very little beyond the space we're currently in. There may be anomalies in physics that defy what we think we know about the universe at play here. If I had to guess, this is artificial. We should stay open to the possibility, though, that this could be a natural occurring event." "Thanks for that clarification, Brooks." Gates then addressed his entire command crew. "Do we have full control of the ship now?" Everyone checked their readouts and responded with an affirmative. Everyone except pilot Frank Wright. Gates stood up and walked over to the pilot station. He placed one hand on the back of Wright's chair and the other on the console. "Give me sit rep and give it to me straight." Wright cleared his throat and said, "My controls are completely non-responsive. I have no control. When I press the buttons, nothing happens. As far as my situation, dead in the water." He shook his head slightly and added, "No pun intended, Commander." Gates nodded and smiled ever so slightly. "Understood. Chin up, pilot. Be ready. If your controls start to work again, I want you to be ready to enter in new coordinates so we can get the heck out of here if needed. On my order. Is that clear?" Wright answered with renewed focus. "Crystal, sir." Gates patted his pilot on the shoulder and turned around to face the rest of the crew. Atkinson reported, "Commander, I'm starting to hear something in the comms. It's a type of static, but there also appears to be a melodious tone mixed in. It's subtle, but it's there." The commander moved swiftly towards his communications officer and said, "Are they trying to talk to us?" Atkinson shook her head and answered, "I'm not sure, Commander. I'll tell you, this is exciting, though." The entire crew laughed, and their laughter seemed to bring a level of relief in the tense moment they were experiencing together. Then Atkinson sliced through their laughter as she said, "Wait a minute!" Alarms started to blast through the command center, and the lights on every console lit up like Christmas trees. A low-toned noise buzzed in their ears and reverberated the deck plating beneath their feet. Sensor Officer Danielle Johnson gasped and said, "I can't believe my sensors. Commander, something is now coming out of the void in the center of the ocean." Gates ran to the front of the command center to get a better view. a massive object was rising up out of the darkness. It was long and cylindrical, with a glowing and pulsating light coming from the very tip of its cylinder. As the object rose higher out of the darkness, he could see that it was built in sections, with each section beneath it a bit larger in circumference than the one on top of it. The object was massive and imposing. The higher it reached into the planet's sky, the more the glow at the tip of the object intensified. "Is it a weapon?" asked Gates. Chief Engineer Albert Fox spoke up first. "It sure seems like a weapon." Brooks cut in. "Inconclusive, Commander, but I think our engineer may be onto something." Gates looked down at his pilot. "Anything right?" Wright responded, "Short of a miracle, this ship isn't going anywhere, Commander." Moore jumped into the conversation. "Weapons appear to be online. Now that those waves have stopped bouncing us around, I'm fairly confident I can aim straight now, Commander. The question is..." Gates cut him off mid-sentence. "The question is, will our weapons even make a dent in that thing?" Without warning, a beam of light shot from out the glowing tip of the object and intersected the Redemption straight through its center. The command center lit up with a brilliant yellow light, and the buzzing increased in their ears. The light pulsated a few times, blinding them all. Commander Gates shielded his eyes and somehow found his way back to his command chair. He tried to call out for a science officer, but found it impossible to speak, as if the light was hindering his ability to utter any noise whatsoever. After a few seconds, the light ceased instantly, and the command deck was silent and still. The commander, still feeling stunned, gazed around the command center. When he got back around to the communications station, Atkinson was nowhere to be found. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Planet Zero. I'm the author and narrator, Brian Donahue. I'd also like to invite you to like, share, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff on your favorite social media platforms. If you've enjoyed this podcast and this story, please share the love with all of your friends and family. Until next time, you're listening to Planet Zero on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.